Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We'll chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. Sahana vavatu sahanau bhunattu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gently open your eyes. We'll chant verses 68 to 72 of chapter 2. Tasmadhyasya mahabaho
Tasmadhyasya mahabaho
Nigrihitani sarvashah
Nigrihitani sarvashah
Indriyanindriyarthebhyah
Indriyanindriyarthebhyah
Tasya prajna pratisthita
Tasya prajna pratisthita
Ya nisha sarvabhutanam
Ya nisha sarvabhutanam
Tasyam jagarti sanyami
Tasyam jagarti sanyami
Yasyam jagrati bhutani
Yasyam jagrati bhutani
Sa nisha pashyato muneः
Sa nisha pashyato muneः
Apuryamānamachala pratishtham
Apuryamānamachala pratishtham
Samudramāpah pravishanti yadvat
Samudramāpah pravishanti yadvat
Tadvat kāmayam pravishanti sarve
Tadvat kāmayam pravishanti sarve
Sashantimāpnoti na kāmakāmi
Sashantimāpnoti na kāmakāmi
Vihāya kāmānyas sarvān
Vihāya kāmānyas sarvān
Pumāmscharati nisprihah
Pumāmscharati nisprihah
Nirmamo nirahankarah
Nirmamo nirahankarah
सशान्तिमधिगच्छति
सशान्तिमधिगच्छति
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ
नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति
नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति
स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि
स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि
ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति
ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So we are doing verse number 70, wherein he says the Sthita Prajna is like an ocean. You cannot understand the depth of the ocean unless you take a plunge and go deep within. From outside, you will never be able to understand what an ocean is. Similarly, you can never understand what a Sthita Prajna is. The only way to understand a Sthita Prajna is to become a Sthita Prajna. It is very interesting because people have their own concepts about who is a yogi, who is a God-realized person. Usually, the concepts which people have are nothing but projections of their own minds. Now, from a state of imperfection, when you project something, that will also be imperfect. So how can you understand the state of perfection from a state of imperfection? It is not possible. Yet that is a mistake which most people make. So usually people have very superficial concepts. See, they have their own concepts of rights and wrongs, and anybody who fits into those concepts, they say, he is a spiritual person. And if someone does not fit in to their concepts of rights and wrongs, immediately they dismiss that person and say, he is not a spiritual person. Remember, any concept which you are having about a spiritual person is nothing but your projection, the projection of your mind. And you cannot think beyond your mind. And your mind is controlled by the various impressions which you have gathered, not merely in this life, but from many, many lives. So that is why it is suggested by the great yogis that never judge a spiritual person. You will invariably make a mistake. Those who are not spiritual, you will think they are spiritual, just based on externalities. A person who thinks money is evil will be so fascinated if a person comes to him and says, I am not interested in money. He will think that is only perfection. The opposite also, if he finds a person dealing with money, then he will conclude that that person is not spiritual. If a person thinks, wearing a particular dress is wrong, now anybody who wears that dress, he will dismiss that person as not spiritual. The mind gets attached to something or other. Attachment to money is also wrong. Aversion to money is also wrong. Attachment to sense objects is also wrong. Aversion to sense objects is also wrong. When I say wrong, I don't mean morally right or wrong. I mean from a spiritual point of view. So when a person is attached to something, deep within him or her, that person has a guilt. Oh, I'm being worldly, I'm doing something worldly. So if he finds another person who is not having that desire, then he thinks that is perfection. It is totally an opinion, a subjective opinion. So you should be very careful as a sadhak to not to project your mind and try to conclude that this is what a sthita prajna is. The idea of giving all these facets is not for you to conclude. It is not for you to find out who is a sthita prajna, who is not a sthita prajna. It is for you to go on absorbing the energy. When you keep studying the different facets of a sthita prajna, that creates an energy pattern within you. So that will keep on expanding you. That will raise your level of consciousness. And you will also become a sthita prajna. Arjuna, who was Krishna's very close friend, never even suspected that Krishna was spiritual. That is why he is asking Lord Krishna to describe a sthita prajna. How does he walk? How does he sit? How does he talk? Can you tell me all that? Live, he is seeing Lord Krishna who was an avatar, and yet he was unable to recognize him as a spiritually evolved person. Forget about avatar and all, that is too high for Arjuna to conceive. But at least, yes, Krishna, he is spiritually evolved. Even that he was not able to conceive. See, he is surrendering to Krishna more out of necessity. He was unable to face a challenge. So he started the process of surrender, but the surrender was nowhere near completion. That is why in the Vishwarupa Darshan chapter, he actually, when Krishna gave him that experience, when he temporarily awakened the third eye of Arjuna and made him experience the infinite, which was Krishna's experience. Krishna was an avatar, he was a representation of the infinite, we can say. Now, when Arjuna experienced that, he became stunned actually. Because all along he had seen Krishna just as a friend. Suddenly he was shaken up. See, even to talk about Asthita Prajna and all that, when Krishna was talking about Asthita Prajna, that was okay. But suddenly when Krishna showed what his true nature was, Arjuna was unable to take it. He became actually very afraid. When we come there, we'll be seeing that. Arjuna becomes so frightened. He remembers all small incidents with Krishna, where he used to joke, tease Krishna. He said, Krishna, please forgive me. Out of ignorance, I cracked jokes with you. I cracked jokes at you. I teased you and all that. Please don't keep in mind. Because he became so much afraid. See, normally speaking, no master will ever throw his weight around. All masters are very, very humble and childlike. Krishna was also like that. But in this context, he had to make Arjuna feel or make Arjuna see that he was a master. Only then Arjuna would absorb this message and do whatever is right. That was the reason why he gave him that experience. Otherwise, Krishna, like any other master, Krishna set the example by being extremely humble. Imagine an avatar which is a direct manifestation of the infinite with full awareness. An avatar is there, and how many people were around? Nobody was able to actually recognize the real greatness of Krishna. That is what happens with any Sthita Prajna. So as a sadhak, right from beginning, if you are very humble and if you don't come to conclusions, it'll help you to progress in the spiritual path very fast. Don't conclude and think this is what is spiritual, this is non-spiritual. I'm talking about the highest state. You find even among the avatars, different avatars, actually, see, for example, if you take Lord Vishnu, he took many avatars. Now there are totally around 24 avatars, out of which 10 avatars became famous. I mean, they were considered to be important avatars, but totally there were 24 avatars. Now each of the avatar, if you take, if you place all the 24 avatars of Lord Vishnu, you will find no similarity in terms of external lifestyle. You take Krishna, he is different. You take Rama, he is different. You take Parashurama, who was an Ansh avatar, Ansh means partial avatar. He was totally different. Different people, different manifestations, but all were representative of that one infinite, which is like an ocean. A Sthita Prajna alone can understand a Sthita Prajna. So don't try to understand a Sthita Prajna and conclude. The effort to understand a Sthita Prajna is a sadhana, is a humble effort which we are making to absorb that energy which will uplift us, which will inspire us. So practically speaking, a Sthita Prajna may be from any culture, may be living any kind of lifestyle. A Sthita Prajna may be very poor financially, or he may be extremely rich. Krishna himself was a prince. He may be in solitude, he may be amidst company. All these things really do not matter. Whatever be the external lifestyle, he is like an ocean, samudram. And the only way to understand the depth of the ocean is to take a dip in the ocean. What is most interesting is, when you take a dip in the ocean, initially you are dabbling with the waves, and then slowly as you go deep inside, your focus shifts from yourself to that vastness. When you are absent, that is when the ocean engulfs you. The reverse also. When the ocean engulfs you, the you means that I disappears. So even the statement, I am a Sthita Prajna, that itself is meaningless. If somebody says, I am an avatar, I am a Sthita Prajna, I am this, I am that has no meaning. Because only when the I is absent, I in a conditioned way is absent, the ocean is experienced. So a Sthita Prajna is in a state of paripurna, supreme state of fulfillment and satisfaction, completeness. That is why masters never used to allow everyone to be close with them physically, because people have so many judgments. They will invariably judge the master, which is a very bad karma, because when we go and judge a master, a saint, that becomes a very bad karma, for which to neutralize that, it may take many births. So only selected people who were non-judgmental were generally allowed to move closely with the master, because whatever the master does, it will not matter to such students. See, a true student who has the depth will not really be bothered about what the master does. The master may do anything. He is only focused on absorbing the energy from the master and uplifting his consciousness. So this word samudram is such a powerful word, and when you absorb that energy, you also start becoming very deep in life. So as the samudram, ocean, remains unmoved, achala. When we started this verse, I brought your focus on to the word shantihi, which is there in the last line. Sa shantim apnoti. And I told you, why is he laying so much of importance on shantihi? Because that is what you're seeking in life. And then I'd given you many more tips and dimensions as to how you're seeking that one thing in many ways and all that. Many points were given. Now, I will give you one more message from this verse, which is actually very subtle. That is, I would say, that is a real message. And that message we can get from the word achala. Achala means not moving. Chala means moving, movement. Achala means not moving away. The moment he says achala, it means he does not move away from something. See, he is not using the word in the sense of reaching somewhere. He says you are already in a place and don't move anywhere. Achala. Asthita prajna does not move anywhere. So there is a difference between reaching a place, that is, you want to move from A to B. Now, right now you are in A and your destination is B. Then you go and reach B. This is one thing. The other is you are already in the place B. Now he says don't move to A or anywhere else. Achala. That is the state of a sthita prajna. Now there is a very deep message embedded there. Where there is a powerful implication. So the first part of the wisdom was given to you in the last few sessions, where I said what you're seeking in life is nothing but peace. But that is not the full wisdom. When it is said you are seeking peace, there is an inherent assumption there that today you are not peaceful and peace is your destination. Like moving from point A to point B. But by using the word achala, what he's trying to say is that there is nothing actually to seek. Peace is not something which you need to seek. You are already in a state of peace. Don't move away from that, he says. Focus on what I'm saying and absorb it as much as you can, because this will change the very way in which you are functioning, the very way in which you are existing actually. See, today everything which you're doing in life is based on the assumption that I am not peaceful, I am not complete. So I want something or other in order to attain peace. Even in the lectures, many a times, it is said, your goal is happiness, your goal is peace. Yes, that aspect of the wisdom is also required. But now, we have to step up the level. If we want to really understand what he's trying to say in this verse, we need to step up the level. That is relative wisdom. From the absolute sense, the peace is not something which you should seek. The more you seek peace, the less peaceful you will be. Why? Because, Seeking means moving away from yourself. You're seeking something. So when it is said that what you're seeking is peace, that was a factual statement. You're trying to find peace. But the fact is, the more you try to find peace, you will move away from peace. Then what is the way? The way is to realize that you are the ocean. This is what I am giving is from the absolute level. That's why I said focus and absorb whatever you can. We cannot really force things here, So when he uses the word, the last word, na kama kami. Who is a kama kami? We say not the desirer of objects. But from an overview, what he means is not merely a person who desires objects. In the process of desiring an object, when someone moves away from the state of peace, that person is called kamakami. Again, I am repeating myself. Desiring per se is not wrong. But when you desire with the idea of getting peace, then you are actually moving away from the state of peace. Such a person will never get peace, will never obtain peace, because peace is not there anywhere outside. It is already there within you. You only have to realize it. So before he talks of a fulfillment of desires and all that, first thing which he gives is achala and samudram. Achala pratishtam, established, unmoved. And then he says ocean. So anything which you do in life, you need to learn to do it peacefully. This is a sadhana tip. From the absolute level, there is nothing outside actually. Everything is there within you. That is why the terminology self-realization was given. Some thinker gave that. I wouldn't say he's a thinker. He must have been a spiritual person to coin that word. God realization. See, self-realization means what? Realizing means it is already there. Now today you are ignorant of it, then you realize it. Oh, yes, this is what I am. So when it is said that your goal is peace, again from a relative level it's fine, but as a sadhak you also need to step up your level and understand that it is not to be taken literally. When it is said your goal is peace, the hidden message there is your goal is to realize that peace which is there within you. See, generally when we fix goals, it is always external only, right? I want this, I want that. So I want a car, I want money, I want name, I want fame, I want family, I want relationships, I want to succeed. So many things you're wanting. Similarly now, you'll say, I want to become a Sthita Prajna, I want peace, I want happiness. So you're again objectifying all that. The mind always is caught up in that illusion. Now in this verse, by using the word achala, he is actually reversing the process. That is, he is bringing you to a different frequency. He wants you to understand that fixing a spiritual goal is something which is totally different from fixing a worldly goal. In the worldly goal, it is something outside you. In the spiritual goal, we are using the word goal, but actually there is nothing to achieve. There is nowhere to go. See, even if people who go to a temple, any place of worship, or they go on yatras, they do. Now, if they utilize it as a symbolic gesture to strengthen their spiritual quest, that is fine. But usually, a person feels, I went to the Himalayas, I went to Muktinath, I went to Badrinath. Why did you go there? To see God, they say. That is a very limited concept. God is there everywhere and within. No doubt a place like the Himalayas may be conducive for your mind to calm down so that you can get a glimpse of what that experience is. But if you think that God is there in a temple and God is not there elsewhere, that is an illusion. That is why a Tamil Siddhar said, Natta kallum pesumo nadan ullirukkail. Means, the idol which you have kept, is that going to talk to you? It is the Nadan. Nadan means the supreme reality is there within you, ullirukkail. These kinds of verses have been misunderstood. He is not against idol worship. He is saying that is not the end all of the spiritual pursuit. An idol is taken up to focus the mind. You take the idol as a symbol, as a representation of that infinite. You focus all your energies on the idol because to directly relate with the infinite may be difficult for everyone. But then, when masters see that people get completely attached to the idol per se and they think God is there only in that, then they make these kinds of statements. They say you should rise above all limitations, whether it is idol worship or whether it is rituals, whether it is religion, whether it is caste, creed, everything. You should become like an ocean. So everything is within you. When God is within you, peace is also within you. So Shantihi Saha Shantim Apnoti. Apnoti means obtains. But remember, this obtaining is not like how you obtain other worldly objects from outside. Here, obtaining means realizing whatever is there within. See, supposing, let us say, your father had left 10 billion as a bank balance. No, you are not aware of it. Father is no more, and the son is not aware of it. Now he is thinking he is a very poor person and he requires a job to meet his ends together and all that. So he goes to the lawyer and says, Sir, can you find me a job? To which the lawyer says, are you asking for yourself or for your friend or someone? He says, no, I'm asking for myself. I'm struggling. The lawyer says, why do you need to take up a job? You have inherited 10 billion. You're a multi-billionaire. Now the son is unable to understand that. He says, how? Then the lawyer takes the will and he shows, see, your father has given this will and the entire 10 billion is for you only. So realize that. So there is a difference between that and a person who is actually starting from zero, who has to earn and who has to save, and slowly he has to become a billionaire. So earning 10 billion is different from inheriting 10 billion. So in spirituality, when we say do the sadhana, you have to grow spiritually and all that, it is not earning wealth, it is inheriting wealth. Why do we say that this is your inheritance? You have come from that infinite only. This is your birthright. This wisdom is not the prerogative of only a few select people. So you always tend to lower yourself. You think this is only meant, this can be achieved only by great masters. It is not true. Everyone is a potential master. Everyone is a potential Buddha. This is your inheritance. You only need to realize that. A guru is like that lawyer who educates, who says, listen, the will is there and this is a proof. You are a billionaire. Even after that, it takes a while for you to absorb that idea. Yes, I am a billionaire. So, sahashantim apnoti means realizing that supreme peace which is already there. The clue is got from that word, achala. So as a sadhana tip, what should you practice? Do everything in life without moving away from that peaceful state. Your first and fundamental duty is to remain in that peace. And what will give you that peace? It is the spiritual sadhana alone. Realizing that I am paripurna will give me that peace. Whenever you move away from the state of peace, you become a kama-kami, the desirer of objects, not merely desiring objects. A person who moves away from the state of peace when desiring an object is called a kama-kami. So it is through regular sadhana and through the higher grace, the grace of the Guru Shakti, that we slowly, as we get established in this wisdom, as he says, achala pratishtam means establishing. Pratishtam means getting established. So as you get established in your true self, then your capacity to not move away, that achala aspect in you becomes very strong. Today, every little thing takes you away from your center. So let your center be peace. Initially I said let your goal be peace. Now let us move a little more higher than that. This is not an external goal. Let your goal be realizing the inner peace which is already there. Let your goal be to be established in that peace. Today in the Nididhyasana meditation, I will initiate that process. I am that supreme peace. I'm already peaceful. I'm already like an ocean. So, apuryamanam achala pratishtam. That achala and pratishtam, combine to give a very, very powerful sadhana message. So get whatever you want in life. It does not matter. If you want wealth, earn wealth. If you want name and fame, get name and fame. If you want relationship, get into relationships. If you want a family, have a family. If you want success, get success. But do it in a sadhana way. And what is the sadhana way? Don't think that money or success or relationships or a name and fame, all these things are going to give you happiness or peace. Be peaceful right from beginning. Do the sadhana, and from a state of peace, now acquire wealth. All that for functional reasons you may do so. You may do so, you may not do so. All that depends on the circumstance, on the context. So, but don't ever shift your center. This is the powerful message of this verse, the central message. As I have repeatedly said, it is not that you will be able to practice this straight away 100%. But to the extent you are absorbing, to that extent now you can start practicing this. See, when it is said, don't have desire, kama, what is meant is don't have a desire with the idea of becoming peaceful. Now, how, that is a hidden message. See, everything cannot be told openly. Things have to be left at that for a person to do sadhana and discover. But unfortunately, people have misunderstood it as don't have desires at all. So they think desiring is wrong. No, that is why our masters were very careful in bringing in another word called ichha, ichha shakti. So when you have a desire with the idea of becoming peaceful or happy, that is kama. When you generate a desire willfully, consciously, not with the idea of becoming peaceful or happy, but from a state of peace or happiness, that desire which you are generating is for functional purposes, then that is called ichha shakti. So a sthita prajna has no kama. He has thrown away all the kama, but he has the ichha shakti, 100% awakened. So that is why in the Puranas, it is said, how did Lord Brahma create the world? This is all a dramatization to give the message. He said, he developed an ichha that the world should come, then the world materialized. This is how they have described. Now you will get very much confused if you read the Puranas without understanding the deeper message, because every god seems to have a desire. When Sati burnt herself, now Shiva was in such great sorrow. That is how they have depicted it. But Shiva is way beyond sorrow, joy and all this. These are all ways by which they are giving you the message. So Shiva married Parvati, Vishnu and Lakshmi were partners. Like this they have given. Now this question may come, if Vishnu is already Paripurna, now why does he require Lakshmi? Or reverse also, if Lakshmi is already in a state of Paripurna, why does she require Vishnu? Same thing with Shiva, Parvati. Now you may ask these questions. The answer is this only. While they are acquiring anything from the world, they never move away from the state of that Paripurna. Paripurna is an internal state. Anything which you get from outside has nothing to do with that. But when you get disconnected from that supreme state, then you are tossed about in the world. Your desires, the ichha becomes kama, and that kama can torment you, can create so much of stress within you. When a person has kama, then even before the fulfillment of desire, he is in a state of agitation. The fear whether the desire will get fulfilled or not, anxiety will be there. There's so much of stress, tension is there. And then when the desire is fulfilled, the fear comes again, fear of losing whatever he has obtained. We saw that in detail, when we studied the ladder of fall. So with that wisdom now, it is more easy to understand what he's saying in this verse. So as the ocean remains unmoved when it is filled with water from all quarters, so does one obtain peace. Means one is established in the state of peace, in whom the objects of desire enter. So we will draw the comparison. What is he saying? On one hand, the water, that is a river, ocean. Instead of using the word apaha, water, we will achieve the rivers which are made up of water actually enter the ocean. So we will take river, ocean. So this is on one hand. So what is he comparing that with? Ocean is being compared with Sthita Prajna, and the rivers are being compared to the various objects of desire. Tadvat kamaha. See, interesting. Kamaha means desire. Kamaha also means object of desire. See, the Sanskrit language is a multidimensional language. I have repeatedly told you that. One word can mean two opposite things also. So how can one word represent the desire and the object of desire? Here we have taken the meaning object of desire. The reason is because he uses the same word again. The last word is kama, kami. So desirer of desires, that doesn't make sense. So desire, kama means object of desire here. The other meaning, if we take kama as desire, that also has a deep significance. We will see that later. But first, you have to get the main message of what he's trying to give. Now this word kamaha is so beautiful in Sanskrit. It means desire and the object of desire. There itself there is a philosophy, there is a sadhana. It is a deep wisdom which is being given. See, kama means desire for an object. Now when he says kama also means the object of desire, then there is a confusion. As I told you, the real object of your desire is peace. That message is infused in the word kama. The end and the means are represented by the same word. It is a very strange way of putting it. If you really think about it, either it should be the process or it should be the goal. How can one word mean the process and the goal? If you penetrate deeper, what he's trying to say is that the object of the desire is already there within you. The real object of the desire is peace only. The Sanskrit language was designed in such a way that there is always a spiritual touch, a philosophical touch to everything. See, our great yogis gave a spiritual touch to every aspect of life. Every aspect of life was divinized. So when you understand the deepest meaning of kamaha, where you join the desire and the object of desire, then what is the state which you reach? You reach the state of paripurna. But when you don't understand that, you are caught up in the state of mere kama, desire, and the object of desire as different from each other. So here, the objects of desire is compared to the river, and the ocean is compared to Sthita Prajna. So what is he trying to say? See, many rivers can flow into the ocean, but the level of ocean neither increases nor decreases. This is the first point which you need to note. You go and pour 10 buckets of water in the ocean remains the same. You take away 10 buckets of water, the ocean remains the same. Entire Ganga, Yamuna, all of them go and merge in the ocean remains the same. The Ganga goes away from the ocean, again the ocean remains the same. Similarly, the objects of the world do not increase or decrease the peace and happiness of a Sthita Prajna. Today, in comparison, when we see the Kama Kami, so when a person acquires an object of desire, that increases his happiness, and when he loses the object of desire, that decreases his happiness. But for a Sthita Prajna, when the objects come to him, it does not increase the happiness or peace. Why? Because he is already in a state of infinite happiness, infinite peace. It is not a dry state. See, many people say, so what is the state of Sthita Prajna? Anything you get, you will still be the same. If you lose something also, you will still be the same. It looks like a stone-like life. No. A stone does not have any emotions. Now, a Sthita Prajna is not like a stone. He is not cold-hearted. He is experiencing whatever that object can, whatever a kami, whatever an ordinary person thinks that the object of desire will give, that he is already experiencing. What is that? That is a peace and happiness. Not merely in a finite way, but in an infinite way. He is already experiencing that peace and happiness infinite times greater than what that object can give. Therefore, that object is not going to increase or decrease his inner state of peace and happiness. So, an ordinary person will be on a high only if his desires get fulfilled. A spiritual person will always be on a high. He will always be in a state of bliss and happiness. He will be very blissful. You go and give him so much wealth and all that, he will recognize that. But he is not going to get excited about that. Because he is already in a state of paripurna. You go and take away whatever he has. Now that also he will recognize, but he will never ever lose his balance. Achala, he is in a state of achala. Just as the ocean is unmoved when all the waters enter. So you should project and understand the rivers also. If the waters go away from the ocean or if the waters enter, both are same to the ocean. Similarly, whether the objects of desire come to a Sthita Prajna or the objects of desire go away from a Sthita Prajna, in both cases he remains the same. He is in a state of achala. So the key in this point is an understanding that he is already experiencing whatever the objects of desire can give in an infinite way. If you miss that point, you will become a cold-hearted person in the name of becoming spiritual. That's what is happening today. A spiritual person is full of life. You see the life of Lord Krishna. He was always cheerful. See, Krishna was born in a state of cheer. That is how they have described it. Generally, when a baby comes out, a baby cries. That is a normal procedure, right? If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that when Krishna was born, he was born with a smile. See, there is you forget the little story. You take the message. That is what is very important. Krishna's manifestation was an expression of bliss, was an expression of cheer. That is how a Sthita Prajna is. As you evolve spiritually, you will also start becoming like that. Everything which you do, you will start doing from a state of peace, happiness, bliss and cheer. These are all different aspects of the inner state, Today, you are in a state of sorrow, you are in a state of incompleteness, which is still they're saying is an imagined one. But for you it is real. And then you act in order to become happy. But a spiritual person is already happy, already peaceful, not merely in a finite way, in an infinite way, because he is connected with the infinite. So all actions which emanate from a spiritual person comes out from that supreme state. They are all expressions. They become expressions of happiness, of peace, of bliss. A person has asked this question, how is it that Lord Krishna was able to be balanced even in a world war? He was a charioteer of Arjuna. It's a very great responsibility because all the arrows of the enemies will go past him and then only to Arjuna. So he is putting himself in that state of risk. It's not merely during the world war. Right from early childhood, if you take Krishna's life, his life was full of challenges only. First of all, where was he born? Where was Krishna born? Was he born in a nice cozy place, maternity hospital or something? No, he was born in a jail. See, starting point of life itself is a trouble. Not from Krishna's point of view, I'm saying from an external point of view, full of challenges. Born in a jail, at a very early age he had to, his uncle was trying to kill him, he had to defend himself. And then when he was a teenager, he had to kill his evil uncle. You see his whole life full of challenges. Yet, if I were to ask you to imagine the face of Krishna, what expression comes to your mind? That of smile, isn't it? So when he says the Sthita Prajna is like an ocean, this is the first point, this is the energy, the first point which is being given, that is the increase or that is the objects of desire do not increase or decrease a state of peace and happiness. That energy you need to absorb. And then it will become very clear to you, your life will be exactly the opposite. It will be in contrast to what he's saying. Every little thing outside will either be lifting your spirits or it will be pulling you down. You see, most people want only joy. That is not possible. If the world is made up of joy and sorrow. If you are excited about one thing today, tomorrow another thing will come which will put you down. If you want to be in a state of permanent peace, joy and happiness, you need to drop your dependence on the world. I'm not saying you should drop the world. I'm not saying you should get away from the world. No, that is not possible. You should drop your dependence on the world for your happiness, for your peace. There is a world of a difference. And you say don't contact the world and saying don't be dependent on the world for your happiness. Because of this misunderstanding, spirituality today has been killed. Why are people afraid to come to spirituality? Because they feel that spirituality means you will have to give up all desires, you will have to give up the world, and you need to lead a stone-like life. That fear is there. No. See, when you understand this principle, then you start appreciating the great message which these masters are giving. That supreme message has been completely distorted today. So a Sthita Prajna may lead any lifestyle, as I told you. He may be a very wealthy person. He may be a very poor person externally. So whether the objects are there or not there, he will still be in a state of paripurna. So that is why he says, as the ocean remains unmoved when it is filled with water from all sides. So having understood the significance of the words Achala and Pratishtam, then when you read this phrase, waters filling from all sides, and then you project waters also going away, that part you can project, then you get the complete message. You know, it is like if a person is a multi-billionaire and then you go and give him 1 rupee or $1, whatever your currency is, or 1 pound. Now that 1 rupee, is it going to make any difference to him? It will not. Supposing you have only 10 rupees and if 1 rupee is given to you, that will make a difference. If you don't have any money and if 1 rupee is given to you, that 1 rupee will definitely make a difference. But if you are already a multi-billionaire, then why 1 rupee? Even 1,000 rupees are given, it will mean nothing. 1 lakh is given, it will mean nothing. 10 lakhs are given, it will mean nothing. 10 million are given, it will mean nothing. Because you are a multi-billionaire. Similarly, you go and take away 1 rupee from a multi-billionaire. Now, is he going to sit and cry? Is he going to spend sleepless night over the fact that he has lost 1 rupee? He is not going to bother. Similarly, a Sthita Prajna is a multi-billionaire in terms of happiness, in terms of peace. Actually, this is only true wealth, because any other form of wealth is only to ultimately get this wealth of peace. That is what everyone is seeking. Now, this person already has that wealth. And what is a quantity? So see, this one word ocean actually describes everything, I don't know how they even conceived this. It's amazing. See, generally, when you give an example, 1 point can be compared. But he is taking something from the world which actually comprehensively covers so many facets of a Sthita Prajna. This is the genius of these great masters. So just as a multi-billionaire will be unmoved when wealth is taken away from him or wealth is given to him, similarly a Sthita Prajna is unmoved. So what is the quantity of peace which he is experiencing? Infinite. So infinite plus anything equals infinite. This is mathematics now. If you add something to the infinite, what is that? It is infinite. See, generally when you say 2 plus 1, we say 3. One more is added. But if you say infinite plus 1, what is it? That is also infinite. Is infinite plus 1 greater than infinite? No. Okay, then you take away something. Infinite minus 1, what is it? Infinite. This great truth is what is given in that mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. That is infinite, means the supreme being is infinite. Purnam Ida, this is also infinite. That infinite and this is also infinite. And then this infinite has come out from that infinite. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. The infinite having come out from infinite, what remains is infinite. This is the invocatory mantra before you enter the Upanishads. Then you can imagine what is the level of the Upanishads, That's not meant for a mere intellectual study. So infinite minus anything is infinite. Infinite plus anything is infinite. So once you get to that state of infinite peace and happiness, wherever you are, whatever you have, whatever you don't have, all these things do not matter. You become the center of peace, happiness, bliss and cheer. And you go on radiating that. Anybody who comes to you, comes in contact with you, they will find their spirits also will be uplifted. This is the greatest seva which you can do to humanity. Radiate that peace, radiate that bliss and cheer. People already have enough sorrows. Now if you go and offload your sorrow, it's one more baggage. The greatest seva which a master does to humanity is to radiate the energy of peace, bliss and cheer, that happiness. So as you do your sadhana and evolve spiritually, you will also start radiating this energy. A master does not need to do anything. His very presence, his very existence is karma yoga, is service. The sun does not need to do anything. Its very presence enlivens the whole world. That is a Sthita Prajna. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudram apaha pravishanti yadvat. See, now when I am reading that, doesn't that speak so much to you? Doesn't that inspire you? If you say no, never mind. We will go to the other points. Something has to inspire you. Okay, so we'll stop with this today. Very, very powerful points have been given. See, externally the points may look so similar, but the depth and the dimensions which are being covered actually are totally different week after week. That is what will inspire a true sadhak. And these sessions are meant for sadhaks. A casual seeker, casual listener will not be able to sustain this. So someone has sent a question asking me, sir, sometimes I'm inconsistent while watching these Sunday discourses. Sometimes I stop the Sunday discourse and then again I come back. So how do I build the consistency? You cannot be consistent if you are not a sadhak, if you are not a seeker. If you are satisfied with your finite limitations, if you are not seeking the higher, if you are not seeking to transform your life, then you will not be consistent. So first examine your life. See, is this what I really want? Or do I want to transform my life? Do I want to transform myself into that supreme state? And as your desire increases, desire for the higher increases, automatically you will become consistent. Nobody needs to send you a reminder, tomorrow there is a discourse. If you require a reminder, it means you have to deepen your seeking. It should be done with full enthusiasm. See, even watching this and then you're recapitulating the points, you're expressing yourself, you're writing the point, everything, do it from a state of peace and happiness. Enjoy the process. Enjoyment is not merely in the achievement of the goal, it is right now there in the process itself. It is actually, with or without the process also, it is there within you. It is your capacity to enjoy which matters. Okay, so before we do the meditation, I will just take up a few questions. This is exactly not a question. Subramanian ji had shared his experience in the YouTube section. He has put it. He has shared his experience where he says, today I also listened to the discourse with my newborn baby, Darsha. Darsha is a very sweet name. So 2 months old now. And I found she was very peaceful during the entire discourse and slept off during the meditation session and woke up immediately after it was over. Very happy to feel her receiving the infinite energy. Now he has shared this nice experience with all of us. I wanted to say a few things regarding this. See, babies have an open aura. So from when can a person start receiving this higher energy? In our Shastras they say, right from when you are in the womb, you are capable of receiving this energy. You must have heard of the story of Prahalada. Prahalada got the higher initiation from sage Narada when he was in the womb of his mother. His mother was a wife of Hiranyakashipu, who was an evil person, a demon, Asura. Now, Prahalada, when he was in the womb, sage Narada gave the initiation. The most interesting part is when Narada was giving the initiation, it is said that the mother slept off. Mother didn't receive the initiation, but the embryo which was there, the Prahalada who was there in the mother's womb, he received the initiation. So when he was born itself, he was born a very peaceful person. Imagine, when you read the Puranas, these are with the right spirit. When you get the message, it is so inspiring. Imagine the stature of a person when in the womb itself he is getting initiated and he is coming out. With that energy, he is born. So that is so true. Even in some of the empowerment sessions, some mothers who were carrying, when they attended the empowerment sessions, it was observed when the healing was sent that the babies received a lot of energy right in the womb. So don't think that this should be given only at a particular age and all that. See, the age is only for the body, but there is no age for the soul. Especially this latest generation, there is just the previous generation, and now the children who are being born, don't take them lightly. They are all having a lot of depth. Their capacity to understand, to absorb is at a very high level. So it is so wonderful. The only thing is you've written slept off during the meditation session and woke up. It is not merely sleeping. She is receiving that energy. So the children have an open aura up to the age of 5. So that is why in our good scriptures, what they suggest is when a lady conceives, she should start associating herself with higher thoughts, positive energy. Every sadhak, every mother who attended our Sunday sessions when she had conceived, or who attended the empowerment sessions, they are all really blessed, because the babies who are born to such mothers have already received the energy. And incidentally, this is many years back, there was a lady who attended the empowerment session. She was carrying, and while giving the empowerment, while giving the healing, it was seen that the baby had some defects at the cellular level. The baby was still growing in the womb. There were some defects. But amazingly, the healing happened so fast, and the baby reacted to it so beautifully. It was very interesting. So till the age of 5, try to give a positive environment to the kids. Don't force them. See, now today she is very silent. But tomorrow, let us say she becomes 1 year old or 1.5 years old, she may be playing around when you're watching the discos. Don't think that now she is not focusing. Leave her to herself, but just expose her to these things. You don't conclude, don't think that, oh, she is so young, she will not be able to understand. A baby's way or a child's way of understanding is different. They pick up the energy directly. So they may be playing everywhere, but since they are having an open aura, the healing energy they will go on receiving. So that is the greatest gift which you can give to your child. So I was so happy when I read this. So even others, expose your children. Don't force them, but just expose without pushing it. Give them an opportunity to receive the energy. Thereafter, it depends upon the karmas of that individual child, how much to receive, whether to receive or not, and all that. Okay, so the other questions I'll take up in the coming weeks. So now we'll do meditation. Sit in a relaxed way, your palms facing the ceiling, fingers naturally curled. Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. With every breath, I am becoming more and more relaxed. Feel the divine vibrations. With every breath, I am going deeper and deeper into myself. Beyond my body, beyond my emotions, beyond all my thoughts, lies my real self, the Supreme Infinite Being. I am one with that infinite self. I am like an ocean, samudram. I am already in a state of infinite peace, infinite happiness, infinite bliss, infinite cheer. Nothing in the world can move me. I am achala, unmoved. I am Swayam Prakashit, self-illumined. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. Offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Slowly come back. Wriggle your fingers, your toes. Rub your palms together to create a warmth. Cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, cheeks, forehead, top of the head, back of the head and neck. Slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. Such a powerful Nididhyasana meditation session we had. And that is the power of these words, Achala, Achalam. Then you have Samudram, Shantihi. They have the capacity to completely transform you, to change your energy field. So reflect on these points well. Put down your points that will help to digest this knowledge. See, only when you put in conscious efforts, not to impress anybody, but genuinely you have to do it with that enthusiasm and interest. Then only the real change will start happening. If you want positive results in your life, you need to ensure that your inputs are positive. That is the key. As far as the Prana Tattva Level 1 Empowerment course is concerned, all the registered sadhaks would have already received the first instructions. That is 3 energized statements. I've specially sat and energized them. So when you read them in that particular way with deep breathing and all that, those instructions were sent to you. That was before going to sleep in the night. Now, today you will be receiving another material. This will be a video material, actually the meditation, where you need to listen to this. It must be for a few minutes. You need to listen to this the first thing in the morning. So the first one which was sent to you, reading those instructions, and after each sentence deep breathing and all that, that is before you go to sleep in the night. This one which will be sent to you today, the instructions will be there how to do it, but I'm mentioning it here. So this you need to do early in the morning, as soon as you wake up. So morning will be this, night will be the reading those statements. So this you do for a while, and then if required, I may give you more preparatory material. It all depends actually. Whatever you require, you will whatever you require will come to me in the form of instructions during the meditation, and when I get the instructions I will do. So you are all receiving the healing energy also very well, the special healing which I am giving to strengthen and prepare your pranic body. So that part of it is there. So also add these preparatory sadhanas. This is apart from your regular normal sadhana which you're doing. Okay, and as we go along, if you require it, then you will be receiving more. Otherwise, this itself will be enough to prepare you. I'm not planning anything. You know how my style is. I generally don't plan and program too much, because the spontaneity will go away. So as you are all receiving the energy, when your energy fields are scanned, depending on how you receive and how you shape up, when the material is designed and given, you will benefit maximum. Okay, and further, if any other special instructions are required also, they will be sent to you. Okay, so thank you very much. We'll meet in the next session. Hari Om.